Let's bring in our guest for the first time on the show. Very excited about this. Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema joins us right now. He's their lead draft analyst. He's been killing it. Trevor, big fan, man. You came out to our Super Bowl party, too, when we were at Circa back in Las Vegas. Brad Spielberger, who's now dead to us for leaving.
We love you, Brad. We miss you, Brad, but bury your dead. Trevor's here.
We got Trevor. What's up, Trevor?
Guys, I appreciate you having me on the show. Obviously, I owed you an appearance for the hospitality for your party that you so graciously let me behind the ropes on, so I appreciate that. Phenomenal spot at Circa as well. But, man, I've been looking forward to this. Obviously, getting to chat with you guys a little bit when we were in Vegas for the Super Bowl, and now getting to talk a little draft here with you. So I'm excited, guys. Don't hold back too much. I was listening to the beginning of the show. You know, you guys talked about getting a little rambunctious. Don't hold it back too much. I can have some fun, I promise.
I'm with you, but just
don't appreciate that.
Don't
invitation.
encourage him too much because things can get crazy real fast. Trevor also co-hosts the NFL Stock Exchange, which I know a lot of people love, and people are excited about this appearance today. So let's dive in. But first thing, I want to bring off an off-camera conversation we were just having because Nick was very impressed with your headphones. I mean, Trevor's some of the best hair,
great hair
that exists in the NFL media world, and for those of us with solid hair, the headphones can be a problem.
Yeah, not for Trevor. Look at this thing.
He's got it perfected.
It's all about the technique, right? Because if I turn the head, you can very much see the indent is absolutely going to be there. I was telling you guys before we started, you know, it doesn't matter. Like I've got the hair pop at the top, so it makes it look like I've got everything going on. It looks like I could take the headphones off and, you know, I could walk into like a hair shoot commercial. But look, when I take these bad boys off, it looks like I've been playing Xbox for 4 hours. So there's no fooling once you get off camera and you get back into real life. So I'm glad that it comes off this way. I'm glad that the front facing is actually my good side for where the hair actually shows up with the headphones.
Yeah, no,
phenomenal job.
It's a mastering right here.
This is the type of draft analyst he's talking headphone technique.
You have to have the information, but you also have to have the presentation, which I know extremely well as I come in here every day looking fantastic.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Hey, Trevor, let's look at this 9 pick before Ho gets in there. Can I do that?
Go for it.
Yeah. So everybody's got a theory out there. The latest that we saw today that we were discussing in the old pre-show meeting was Daniel Jeremiah's the Bears trading up to get Joe Alt. Does that sound crazy to you, or what's your reaction to that thought process?
Well, I didn't see that trade. It would be interesting. I've never really thought about the Bears trading up from number 9. Maybe they're trying to go for the the Mike Ditka strategy when he was with the New Orleans Saints, where he just traded all those picks, picked Ricky Williams at the top, and went, there we go. I'm going golfing. See you guys later. That's my weekend, actually. So I don't know. Maybe like you're trading a couple of picks to move up, and maybe you're only making those first 2 first-round picks. But look, I mean, Joe Alt would be a fantastic prospect for him. You know, you draft Darnell Wright last year. I like Darnell Wright a lot, so I like that selection. I think he could be a really solid offensive tackle in this league. You're pairing him with one of the most steady offensive tackle prospects I've seen in a long time, maybe the best since Penei Sewell when he was out there, his draft class. And anytime you got a chance to have those bookend tackles when you're drafting a franchise quarterback at number 1, I don't hate the thought process. I think they're much more likely to trade down than to trade up. But yeah, I guess, I mean, it's hard to argue the results if you come away with Caleb Williams and Joe Alt.
Well, selfishly, we have tickets to sell on our draft party Friday night, so I'd prefer if Ryan Poles held on to that number 75 overall pick.
Add on to it as well. That'd be great.
We could add a second rounder. That'd be nice, too.
Tickets
Although the idea
Friday.
of golfing on Saturday of the draft sounds pretty good. So you can get me maybe 122. Yeah, it'll be interesting, Trevor. Where are you at with these offensive linemen? Because I think Joe Alt's kind of settled in there as almost the unanimous number 1 among the offensive linemen. I really like Telis Fuaga.
Right.
I know, there's some concerns there. Can he play left side because he's mostly been on the right side? The arm length, which always comes up with somebody every year. Troy Fatanu, somebody that continues to grow on me. I know some people think he maybe should be inside on guard, maybe move inside to guard. I still think he could be a tackle. Where do you, especially on those 2 guys, where do you fall?
Yeah, I like both these guys a lot. Both of them are in my top 15 on my final big board that I released earlier this week. And I think they've got a lot of really great versatility to them. And these are 2 guys who I really do believe could play either tackle or guard at the NFL level. Now, Fuanga, if you want to say okay, his skill set, his mauling mentality, the fast footwork, the fact that he always loves to bring the fight to the defenders that are coming at him. He's not going to sit here and just be passive and be patient. Okay, I'm going to wait for these guys to make their first move. No. He's a lot like Darnell Wright, right? And man, if you had an offensive line that included Darnell Wright, Talise Fuanga, Tevin Jenkins. I mean, those are some serious ass kickers. I mean, that is a culture and a tone that you want to set in the trenches, that anytime you're going up against this guy, you know that the ice baths are going to be good and plenty after the game for some of these defensive linemen, because they're going to be taking a lot of hits. But, with those guys, I really do feel like, even with the shorter arms, because I believe his arm length was somewhere in the 30th percentile with Talise Fuanga, I still think he can survive a tackle, man. I really do. I mean, that footwork is so fast. I think the way that he gets off the line of scrimmage, and again, being able to have those jump sets where he's making contact first, I think is very advantageous to mitigating some of those length deficiencies that he has. And I feel like over the last 2 years, he has only gotten better. This past year, he was absolutely fantastic. So, when it comes to switching from the right side of the line to the left side of the line, former offensive lineman used to tell me it's like trying to wipe your butt with your opposite hand, right? I mean, like, you can do it, it's just gonna be awkward for a little bit, right? And so, you can kind of get to that level if you do it enough, if you have enough repetition when you're switching over to the left side. Yes, some guys can do it a lot easier than others, and some guys just can't. Unfortunately, you won't really know until you get them in live situations, even like training camp, preseason, things like that. So that's sort of a tough projection, but it's hard for me to say, like, no, he can't move to the left side. So now I'm going to think, all right, well, he's got a lot of versatility to him when it comes to guard and tackle. I can see him flipping over. And the same thing with Troy Fautanu. We watched him, and I watched him play left tackle for Washington over the last couple of years, and I actually felt like there might have been some arm length deficiencies with him, but then he shows up, he's got 34-inch arms. It's well over 50th percentile. So now you look at the rest of his game, very quick, extremely athletic. I mean, you love the power up punch that this guy's had. Okay, so he's not going to be like a mauler like some of these other, like J.C. Latham or Talise Fuanga is going to be, but he's so smooth. And I'll tell you this, the balance, the core strength is fantastic. Sometimes he'll wear the crop top jersey, like, I don't know, like Ezekiel Elliott. He's like, hey, left tackles, they can show the belly a little bit too. And you can't necessarily see the abs, but I can tell that he's got abs underneath there because of the way that he is able to control his body and mirror some of even the faster defenders that he went up against over the last couple of years. And so those would be two guys who, if Chicago doesn't have the opportunity to pick one of those top tier wide receivers that we often see in mock drafts, one of those offensive linemen I think would be a great choice for.
So Trevor, you mentioned the mock drafts, and like everybody, we're trying to see like how's this draft going to shape out. At 9, what do you think ends up happening? Who do you think the Bears end up actually taking?
I know that most of the mock drafts have them taking one of Malik Nabers or Rome Odunze. It'd be great, right? I mean, like, it'd be an insane trio of wide receivers to be able to pass the ball to if you're Caleb Williams. I'm not convinced one of those guys is going to be available at 9, right? I mean, we just talk too highly of these players to think that somebody is going to let one of them get out of the top 8, even with the quarterback frenzy that we think is going to come up. We believe that 4 out of those top 8 selections are going to be quarterbacks, but then it's still realistic to think that 3 of the next 4 are going to be wide receiver, which is kind of crazy. So look, if a wide receiver is there, I think that you take him. But then if not, you're probably sitting there at number 9, and you could go offensive line. I wonder if they're going to go defensive line instead. And the reason why I say that is because there's a handful of players that they could really love. You love what you got from the investment in the trade of Montez Sweat, but you're still looking for that big difference maker on the other side of the football. On the other side of the defensive line. A Laiatu Latu from UCLA, a Jared Verse, a Dallas Turner. Chance all 3 of those guys are available for you. And if you have those 2 guys, any of those guys paired with Montez Sweat, that is a sick edge rusher duo. But then I go back to this. I'm a big fan of Johnny Newton from Illinois. I think he's really underrated in this class. You got a lot of people who are letting him slide in mock drafts to the 20s, sometimes not even in the first round. I think that's nuts. I think this dude's a top 15 player in this class. I think he could be a fantastic 3-technique defensive tackle. And Matt Eberflus, in order for his defense to really fire on all cylinders the way that it needs to, he needs a penetrating, pass-rushing 3-technique defensive tackle. Byron Murphy II or Johnny Newton. If I'm a Bears fan, I would be happy with either of those 2 players to play that 3-technique spot for Matt Eberflus in this system, because I think it's a massive difference maker, right? You've got Zach Pickens, you got Gervin Dexter, you like what those guys are. Maybe Dexter can evolve into more of a pass rusher than he was at Florida, and I think he did a little bit towards the second half of the season, but still, you got those guys to be run-stuffing players, and then getting a solid, young 3-technique player on that defensive line, to me, would be worth it. I know it's not super popular of a pick, but that's where I continue to go for this team if it's not wide receiver at 9.
So let's do a little bit of that dance, Trevor. And by the way, I'm not as professional as Nick to just allow the ambidextrous butt wiping situation go by. That was,
I knew you were. I knew that wasn't going to get past you. Especially,
I mean, I wanted to bring up that, for a guy that uses a bidet. I mean, doesn't even
bidets.
matter.
But that was. I mean,
and you were missing for the first 5 minutes right before the show. So I feel like you might have had an opinion on that.
I go straight down the middle like everybody else out there. But we did have somebody in the chat that said he's ambidextrous. I forgot his name now. I think it was I want to say Josiah was in there. Yeah, Josiah Garza. I'm an ambidextrous butt wiper. That's a big time listener right there. Thank you, Garza. Congratulations, you're elite. But you got me excited here, Trevor. Like, okay, fine. Neighbors, Adunze, Marvin Harrison are all gone. You're looking at what's the best play here. How far back do you think you can go to get one of the 3 techs that you just named and add on picks? If you're Ryan Poles, how safely can you trade back and get one of those 2 dudes?
Man, that's the interesting question, because again, if you ask me, Johnny Newton should absolutely be off the board by pick 20, right? I mean, like, at the very least, I think that over the last 2 years in our grading system, cumulative grades, elite pass rush grade, elite run defense grade. Now, when we say run defense, he's not like taking up double teams and holding the line of scrimmage. I mean, like, he can sometimes, but he's much more of like a gap shooter when it comes to those run defense. He's trying to get in the backfield. He's trying to make those tackles for loss. He's trying to cut off running backs to the rushing lanes, especially in zone blocking schemes. The way that he could do that is pretty impressive because he can get off blocks. But again, it feels as though the NFL is lower on Newton. Maybe it's just the body build. Maybe it's the lack of length. Maybe it is kind of that just lack of run defense that he might have there. But as a pass rusher, it's so hard for me to understand why he is sliding all of these mock drafts. I'm looking at one of the betting books yesterday, and they've barely got Johnny Newton as minus money to go in the first round at all. And I'm like, what are we doing here? I know it's a talented class, but that's why that scenario, and to your exact question, is intriguing to me, right? Because it's a team that only has 4 picks in the draft total right now. You might be able to, if one of those wide receivers are off the board, trade to, God, I don't know, maybe if Jacksonville wants to pop up and get CB1 or a top wide receiver in this class, like maybe Seattle or Indianapolis might want to do the same, right? I mean, like maybe Cincinnati, I know they don't really trade up ever, but like they go up and get Brock Bowers or something. You can get more towards the end of the teens, get some extra draft picks, and still come away with Johnny Newton. I mean, that might be best case scenario for this team, especially because of how big of a difference maker I think he'd be as a 3 tech for Eberflus's defense.
And you might need one of the wide receivers to be there, by the way, to get the value that you're looking for, and then you're passing on one of those, which Bears fans would freak, but that doesn't matter. Ryan Poles has got to get it right.
All right, continuing things with Pro Football Focus's lead draft analyst, Trevor Sikkema, on the show with us, crushing it with his draft knowledge here. And sharing it with all of us. My question to you on Johnny Newton, because I'm with you on the 3 technique stuff. I think it's a huge need for the Bears, and I'm personally a big fan of Byron Murphy, who we have all the way up at number 7 right now on our Bears 100, which is our board that's kind of catered specifically to the Bears' needs. We have Newton farther down at number 24. Part of that is because I've heard some concerns about that foot injury he had, that teams might still have some concerns about that. I mean, look, we still have him at 24 overall. I like him a lot. I agree he should be a first-round pick, but that's the only kind of hang-up I have. Do you have any concerns about that? I mean, what do you know about what he went through there? I know he's a little limited in the offseason draft prep season and all that he had to go through, because otherwise the player himself, I get it. He seems like a really good NFL 3 technique.
Yeah, I'm not overly concerned about the foot injury, and that's really just because I have not heard more like alarms going off about the foot injury, right? And that's kind of part of the draft process. It's tough, right? Sometimes, for example, like Jackson Powers Johnson, he was seen as 100% top 20 pick, absolutely. And then we kind of continue to go on after the Senior Bowl, which is where that really started to kind of come up, and it goes through the combine medical checks and everything. And then all of a sudden, like whispers start to come out as like, okay, like he might have had something. He might not have had the cleanest medicals and things. So you don't really know. You kind of hear about these things, but I'm not really sure. I haven't heard anything definitive about Johnny Newton because here's the thing. Okay, if his foot injury lingers a little bit longer than you wanted to, is it going to be something that he really deals with long term, or is just the recovery a little bit longer than you initially thought it was going to be? Because if it's the latter, again, don't really care. If it's the former, then yeah, that's something that you would build into why he might be falling down the boards a little bit. But I haven't heard anything really concrete that that's going to be the case with his foot injury. So it's hard for me to factor that into his evaluation.
Trevor, this is also a time where we have our guys, right? So it doesn't matter like what other people think of them. They're your guys. Who are some of your guys in this draft that you just absolutely love?
Okay. I got a lot. These are like my kids here. I feel like I've been studying the tape so long on these guys, but Mike Samerstill is the first guy that I'll bring up from Michigan. He's a lot like Brian Branch last year, and if you asked me this question last year, I would have said the same thing about Brian Branch. I gave Brian Branch a top 20 grade despite being a nickel defender, and I almost never do that for any sort of player like that. But he's sort of the same mold, nickel defender, but he's just the type of football player that you would absolutely love to have on your team. He is fearless. He can play safety. He can play slot corner for you. He'll come up and tackle. He's got a wide receiver background. He's got elite ball skills. You know, they raved about him at Michigan, which was a really good program. And he's going to be one of those guys that I think he's going to make a fantastic pro. In the same light, Javon Bullard, same thing. Nickel defender, who I absolutely love. Just an absolute, full pun intended, dog from Georgia. And you don't start as an underclassman at Georgia unless you are on your P's and Q's, unless you are fearless, unless you have great instincts. And that's exactly what he was. He was a slot defender as a sophomore. They moved him back to safety this year. So he's got that versatility to him as well. But these are dudes that you just absolutely want on your football team. A.D. Mitchell is my wide receiver 4 in this class. So I feel as though I have to kind of like stand on the table for him as one of my guys, because people will talk about Keon Coleman or Ladd McConkey or Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas Jr. is that wide receiver 4, but I just think that A.D. Mitchell he's too good, man. I think that he's too good in this class. Jonah Ellis, edge rusher from Utah, another guy that I think is probably my guy. I'm a little bit higher on than most people, and because he feels as though he's day 2 version of Laiatu Latu, right? Where there's some physical size limitations of why he wouldn't go in the first round. But if you love Latu because of how he can get in the backfield and all the pass rush moves he has and all the counters, how he approaches the game, you're going to love Jonah Ellis because he's sort of the same thing, right? He's got a variety of different moves, loves the two-handed swipe. He can hit you with an inside spin move. He's got really good counters to stay off a block. So those are a couple of players that I guess come to my mind immediately when I think of players that I'm higher on in this class than other draft evaluators.
So Trevor, we're going to use your guys' outstanding PFF mock draft simulator here on the show for the next week or so to do what we're going to call emergency mock draft. So at any given moment, we might stop the show and be like, all right, let's just see what happens this time and try to play through these scenarios, okay? So let's do that with you right now if you don't mind.
Okay, sure.
All right, I just did it. Bears, obviously. Ooh, look at that. We even got
graphics.
We got graphics. We got sound. I didn't even know that was coming. Thank you, Steven. So Caleb Williams obviously going number 1. So we're fast forward down to number 9 here. We're not doing a trade up or anything. Joe Alt just came off the board to the Titans. Dallas Turner went to the Falcons at number 8. Those seem like very chalky picks at this point. But Rome Odunze is the top player available according to the PFF mock draft simulator. Brock Bowers is there. Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, Laiatu Latu. Your guy Johnny Newton's still there. Byron Murphy's still there. Fuaga's still there. What would you do in this situation? Would you look at trading back, too? Because I got a list of, it's telling me 6 teams are interested in the pick, including the Colts at number 15.
Yeah, I mean, I would think about trading back. I really would. I think that Ryan Poles is going to have the phones completely open into all different deals to see what he might be able to get, especially with not a lot of draft picks there. And I don't think they're desperate to move back, but I think that they'll definitely look to do so. It's hard for me to sit here and say, hey, don't take Rome Odunze, right? I mean, if he's on the board, it's so difficult for me to pass up on him like you were talking about a couple of minutes ago, right? The reason why a lot of these teams might trade up is the same reason why you should stand pat and probably take this really dang good football player. So even though a trade down, you can get funky with it and you have a lot of fun, I'd be taking Rome Odunze and be setting up the best wide receiver trio in the NFL, I think, at that point for Caleb Williams to come in and play behind or play with.
This is hypothetically here. I ran the trade through with the Colts.
Okay.
And what it would have taken was you move back to 15.
Mm-hmm.
You get 46, which the Bears don't have
That'd be
right
nice.
now. And
Yep.
you also get 117 in the fourth round. So you add a second and a fourth rounder. To me, though, like to your point, I'm just like, man, Roma Dunze is – I don't know. That's a tough decision, and one that, quite frankly, part of the reason why we're going to be doing this is because that's like something that could very well happen on draft night where you're like, man, how badly do we want that second-round pick versus how much do we want Roma Dunze?
Yeah, it kind of comes down to, you not only have your big board that teams make, but you're going to have the big board broken up into tiers and buckets, right? Where you go, okay, at number 9, these are the players that we're comfortable with. Like, these are the players that we would take at number 9 that we believe are worthy of the number 9 pick. And if none of those guys are still on the board, then you probably trade down, right? I think that's probably a healthy way to operate is you have anywhere from 4 to 6, maybe 5 to 7 players that you say, we are comfortable with. And look, a couple of those guys, most likely not going to be on the board. Marvin Harrison's going to be in that group. And then the 2 other wide receivers are going to be in that group. Maybe Brock Bowers is, maybe a couple of the offensive tackles. And you think that somebody's going to be left there, but if none of them are there, then that's actually when you start the trade down conversations. Because if not, you got to stick to your board. You got to stick to your evaluations. If they're a blue chip player that you think could really impact the team, stay there and take them. Don't get too cute.
It's interesting real quick too with like getting that second round pick 46. Like, how does Ryan Poles evaluate this entire wide receiver draft class? Because if it is a deep class, and if you can get an impactful player and one of those guys that at 9 are not there, then that's maybe a reason why you're comfortable trading back and selecting a guy later in the draft.
Well, and that's to build on that. Like, I'll give you a scenario here. You can have your A.D. Mitchell at 28. He's there in this fake world. So you're trading out a 9 with Buffalo. You're getting 28. You're getting their first rounder next year, and they're throwing in maybe even, let's say, one of their fourth rounders this year. So you're going to get the 28. And the 60, and 128, and next year's first. And you get A.D. Mitchell. They get Roma Dunze. Would you do that?
I'd do that. Yeah, Trevor.
I'd still take Roma Dunze. I really would. Again, like you guys know I love AD Mitchell, but even AD Mitchell is like, there's such a variance of how good he can be. If you tell me that I'm getting the best versions of AD Mitchell, sure, of course, I think I'm going to sign up for that trade all day long. But there's a reason why he would probably last until the late first round is because there's just there's been a lot of variance to his play. Even within games, there's been a lot of variance to his play, let alone kind of week to week and year to year. So if you tell me I get the best of him, sure, I'm going to sign up for that all day. I know I'm getting the best of Roma Dunze, right? And sometimes the draft is just that simple. Just go draft a good football player. I think it'd be a little bit different if the class wasn't as good, because at number 9, it's not always a guarantee that you're getting this stud, this guy that you know is going to be fantastic. And if there's any sort of gray area to it, I think you're entertaining moving down. And like you said, maybe having more throws at the dartboard is better than just having a few, but the bullseye is a little bit bigger. In this instance, I'd rather take the big bullseye. And I think Chicago, to be honest with you, at this point, over the last couple of years, they want the bigger bullseye target. And you got to be able to hit it. And that's why I wouldn't have moved off at 9.
Trevor, we'll let you go on this, but our next segment we're going to be talking about surprises that might happen. Well, this is one of the reasons why I think the NFL draft is just such great television, because it always feels like somewhere 20 to 25 minutes into the draft, sometimes faster, like when the Bears traded up for Trubisky at number 2, something happens that you just don't see coming. So, we've been talking about the Vikings moving up for J.J. McCarthy and all this stuff for Drake May for like months now, it seems like. Is there something, not that you would be reporting or anything, but just something that like you could see happening that would maybe be a surprise to most on draft night?
I wonder, there's a couple of things that come to mind. What the Raiders do and what the Broncos do, I think at 12 and 13 is absolutely fascinating. Like, what is happening with those teams? Are they going to try to move up? Are they going to try to move way back? What's going to happen with those two teams? I think you mentioned one of sort of the crazy strategies is what Buffalo desperately needs a top tier wide receiver now. Do they get super aggressive and try to move all the way up with one of these other teams? Like, maybe are they the team that moves up to 12 with the Broncos to go take a Brian Thomas Jr. or something like that? But the big wild card to me is the Indianapolis Colts at 15, because Chris Ballard's not really this let me trade all my draft picks type of a GM. He has his value chart and he normally sticks to it. But they could use a lockdown, shutdown CB1, and they could also use another elite wide receiver on the outside. Does Chris Ballard finally make this massive move now, knowing that he's got Anthony Richardson in hand? They've got a head coach in Shane Steichen that they absolutely love. Does he actually start to give up some of those draft picks to move way up, maybe even into the top 10, maybe with an Atlanta Falcons to jump the Chicago Bears? I'm sorry to your audience listening to this, but to go get, if Rome Odunze is still on the board, to go do something like that. I wonder if Ballard, who is normally very quiet with how he trades and trades up, because it doesn't happen often, I wonder if he is going to make a lot of noise and make a big splash in this draft.
Trevor, great stuff. We appreciate it. Our guy Greg Braggs Jr. thinks you look like Bradley Cooper. I don't know if you saw that in the comments. Have you ever heard that before?
Very few times, and every single time I tell people the same thing. The check is in the mail for you doing that, actually. So I really do appreciate being on the lookout for that.
Well, Braggs needs it because he did get a ticket yesterday, and I actually he needs to pay that. So that's a good development right here. Trevor, great stuff, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it, guys. Anytime.
We all silly like the mayor.